My name is DJ Okapi. I'm a DJ here in Johannesburg and I run a record store that I've opened called Afrosynth Records here in the Maboneng precinct. I come from Cape Town originally. I started DJing there. Started DJing on UCT radio actually, and then I got a residency at Marvel Club in Long Street. From then I started digging, collecting records and getting more and more into South African music. Disco music from the 80s and more recently I suppose Kwaito stuff from the 90s that I could find on record. Over the last couple of years I kind of built up a little niche for myself, playing local music mainly. Selling records now as well and just kind of trying to promote South African music that is kind of at risk of disappearing because you don't hear it on the radio anymore. It's music from a long time ago I suppose. So through DJing I try and preserve and promote a part of South African history really that other DJs I think don't really push in the same kind of way. When I moved up to Joburg, I started really getting deeper and deeper into South African music, meeting old producers, interviewing them, really researching and becoming a student of that kind of era. Because it's before my time, I grew up in the 90s. I read a book by a guy called Godfrey Malloy, who was a big entrepreneur and kind of community leader in Soweto back in the day. It was his life story, his autobiography basically, and he was talking about how he would have an Okapi knife on him all the time, and other Tsotsis would carry Okapis with them. And I realized an Okapi is really like quite a powerful symbol for South African street culture, you can say. Obviously, an Okapi is also an animal in the Congo, so it's got a nice double meaning with a kind of Pan-African twist. So, I've always just been passionate about exploring new music, ignoring, I suppose, what maybe my friends were listening to, or just trying to find, something interesting and something unique. I would spend hours and hours and hours in CD stores just listening to stuff and building up a collection as well. And by the time I got to university, I realized that, I can share this music with people. So I got a show on UCT radio in Cape Town, a crew called Mix and Blend. They had the show after us, late night on a Sunday. And they put up a flyer in the studio saying, a club called Marvel is looking for DJs. So I followed up. I stayed there for 3 years, basically every Sunday night, just playing old soul jams and Motown stuff and all kinds of things. Mainly hip-hop DJs there, so I was playing that kind of old school stuff that their music would sample maybe. Yeah, I started spending the money that I earned on buying records and slowly built up a collection. Through buying records, found some South African stuff, Brenda Fassie and Harare. Yeah, I was studying politics and English and realized, I guess back then music was what I wanted to do, not necessarily DJing, but back in the day I also used to manage 1 or 2 bands, and I realized, you can make a living out of music if you multitask and if you work hard enough as well. I did my master's degree through UNISA. I basically just researching the music industry back then, interviewing people from the industry. So when I moved up to Joburg 2009, the first thing I did was really just phone old producers, old artists, old label executives and stuff, and just speak to them about the music industry in the 80s for this research I was doing. I kind of fell in love with the music and realized that it's actually quite an important part of our history as South Africans. That a lot of the artists and people I've met over the years, they've passed away since I've spoken to them, and when they pass away, their story dies, and their legacy disappears because they haven't recorded it or preserved it. I started a blog called Afrosynth by 2009. With the first few South African records I picked up. When I tried to find any information online, for example, there was just nothing there. So I realized there's a need to create that information, slowly digitizing my collection, I suppose, mainly with the photos and the written word and the album information. Built up like an online archive of about 1,000 albums or so, and it's growing all the time. Quite a lot of mixtapes as well, and really it was the first platform for me to share this kind of music. And as that blog grew, more and more people, I guess, developed an interest in this music and started contacting me about where do they find the music, or can I find a particular thing for them. Often overseas, actually, more than in South Africa, people were asking me. There are not a lot of record stores in South Africa, but those that are here tend to focus on American music, I think, let's be honest. I realized, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. Maboneng is the perfect spot to really do it. It's a vibrant, multicultural, young community that's developing here. I live here, I've lived here for the last 5 years. This is the perfect place to have a record store. I just decided to take the plunge and do it, quit my day job and just follow my heart and take a risk. So far, so good. It's paying off. I think since I opened the store, I found it's been easier for me to get gigs, for example. So selling records, DJing, and hopefully the label side, reissuing records, they kind of all work together. I play only vinyl. Actually, these days, I'm kind of known as a vinyl DJ, I suppose, but it's really a kind of a luxury or privilege to have enough records to be a vinyl-only DJ. And I don't hold vinyl up as something that's kind of holier than any other format. To me, it's about the music only. For me, as a DJ trying to play South African music from the 80s, that's just the format that it's on. But if I were a different kind of DJ playing different music, then I might be playing CDs, I might be playing USB or controller or whatever. I love it, and I'm happy to play vinyl only, even if it means I have to bring my turntables to the gig or I get a sore back from carrying stuff. Digging is really central to what I do as a DJ, and I'm always finding more music. Since I opened the store here, Afrosynth Records, I've even had guys coming, bringing stuff to me, which is great, you know, to trade or whatever. I'm always looking for new, old South African music to mix up my sets, to surprise people, whether hopefully positively, sometimes negatively, but at least you getting some kind of emotional reaction out of people, and you're not just playing it safe, playing the hits, or doing what any other DJ could do as well or better than you know. In South Africa, it's not as simple, I think, as in Europe or North America. There's not a lot of record stores, so if you go digging, you're not really going to a record store, you're going to a warehouse or a bookstore or a second-hand store or wherever, you know. So in Joburg, there are places to go. It's getting harder and harder to obviously find good deals these days. Yeah, I've done one release with an American label called Cultures of Soul. It's basically I helped with the track selection. My name is on there basically as a co-compiler, and I wrote the liner notes, all that kind of stuff as well. That's also what opened a lot of doors for me in Europe to get some gigs. Since I've done that, which came out in September 2016, I've done a compilation with Rush Hour, which is a larger label and store and distributor in Amsterdam. The first compilation was kind of early 80s, very much American-influenced funk and soul from South Africa. The Rush Hour compilation is more from the second half of the 80s, so it's more electronic. It's more obviously South African music. It's all coming from the same catalog, an independent label called Music Team, which did some really interesting kind of pioneering electronic music in the late 80s, the early 90s. So those three compilations with established reissue labels overseas provided a platform for me to hopefully then launch my own label and start doing some releases under Afrosynth Records as well. Well, since I started selling, and since I've particularly opened the physical store here, it's opened a huge amount of doors for me in Europe to get DJ gigs there as well. I've been selling records to DJs in Europe, for example, selling to promoters, and I'd often follow up and say, you know, thanks for buying the record, can you hook me up with a gig, you know? And it actually worked, you know. A lot of the guys could book me, but the first few times in 2016 that I went, I had to buy my own ticket basically and just take the plunge. I went for the first time in September 2016. I spent 2 weeks in Amsterdam and a week in Berlin. Had a few gigs around small bars and clubs and things. I played at the Paradiso in Amsterdam, which is a really big established venue there. And then November 2016, I went to the UK as well. Basically did about 12 gigs all over the UK. And included in that tour was a Boiler Room gig as well, which is obviously a massive platform. From those two tours that I funded myself, I've now been booked to go back to Europe, and I've got a booking agent who can sort me out. I'll be in Europe 4 different times during the summer, which is mid-year 2017, and then September I've been invited to China and to play a gig there, which is just, I still can't really believe it, it's a bit crazy, but there are promoters out there who are interested in this music. I've got a little kid and a family and stuff as well. I try and just spend time with them when I'm around, obviously, because sometimes I'm away for a week or 2 at a time, and it's a bit tough on my wife and my kids. So yeah, I don't do a huge amount else besides music at the moment. I'm really trying to make a living out of music itself. Writing I'm still down for, but I'm just taking a break, a sabbatical at the moment to really concentrate on my DJing, I suppose. But who knows, you know, I think the physical store doesn't necessarily need to be here for the rest of my life, you know. The store might end up becoming an online store only, and that might free up the time for me to travel more or to get a day job if I was really so desperate, or if somebody offered me a good job that I couldn't turn down. You know, I would love to stay in the music industry and just keep learning about it. A positive contribution to the music industry, not just focusing on old music, but also even, you know, providing a place for contemporary South African artists to sell their records, and also maybe to help them get their stuff pressed on record as well. There's a huge amount of interest in South African music from all over the world, you know, not just bubblegum, but house and hip-hop and jazz and traditional music. And I think I'm now relatively well placed to be able to help South African artists, you know, break out into the European market as well, and really make a positive contribution to South African music. My name's DJ Okapi, chilling with the Spindle crew here in Afrosynth Records in Johannesburg.